We are building the snake game with a twist for the YByte Python curriculum available at www.ybyte.in. Previously, we gave movement to our snake head, which is what makes it move. Now, in this video, we are going to see how we can make it turn because that's an essential part of the game. Now, really, we have done this in Scratch before, so that's where I'm going to start. Remember, when we did this in Scratch, we had 4 different loops for the 4 different turns. Basically, each of these loops responded to a certain key, for example, down arrow, up arrow, left arrow, right arrow for the respective turns. Also, we made sure there was no about turn. For example, here, if the direction is not 0, which means if the snake is not going upwards, only in that situation, we made it go downwards and so on. Now, we are going to do exactly this thing. There are 2 parts to this. One is, let's say, this piece of code, which is making a turn, but without doing an about turn. That will be done using a function. So we are going to create 4 functions, and thereafter we are going to do the key binding, which means we'll tell our screen, we'll tell our turtle program that look, these keys must trigger this particular function. That's done using the onKey method. But let's do this step by step. First, let's build these 4 functions where we basically make the sprite turn or the turtle turn without doing an about turn. Now, at this point, it's important to understand that there is a little difference between the way Scratch represents angles and the way Python represents angles. Now, this is both are correct in their own way, but we will have to look at what Python does. 0 is on the right, unlike Scratch where 0 was going upwards. 90, 180 and 270. These numbers are important because fundamentally turtles are obedient and we must make sure our code quotes exactly these numbers so that the code works properly. With this introduction done, let's get to our code and define those 4 functions. So let's say I say, a function to turn down. So I said def down. Notice this function has no arguments coming in, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So I say def down, and I say, okay, look, if t dot heading, let's say, so basically if the turtle is not heading upwards, we would want it to turn downwards. And how do I know it's not heading upwards? Well, if the turtle's heading is not equal to, now this exclamation makes it not equal to, so turtle heading is not equal to 90. Remember, 90 was going upwards. If turtle heading is not 90, well, then t dot set heading to, let's say, 270. And that's fine because 270 basically goes downwards. Now we just need to repeat this 4 times with the right value. So I'm going to say, okay, look, do this say 4 times, but obviously I can't have the same function name, so I'm going to change this. I'm going to say def, let's say up. In case of up, if the turtle is not going down, I'm going to make it turn up, right? So which means that if the heading is not 270, I'm going to make it, let's say, 90. If it's in the case of left, I'm going to check if the turtle is not going right, I'm going to make it go left, which means again an about turn is avoided. So which means if the heading is not 0, let's make it, let's say, 180. And finally, in case of right, well, we check if the turtle is not going left, then we turn it right. So in case of right, if the heading is not, let's say, 180, we set the heading to 0. Now, this is just one part of it where we have given functionalities to do a turn without doing an about turn. But now we need to do the second part, which is the key binding, which is basically telling that, look, if I press this particular key on my keyboard, then this function should get executed. Now that gets done by using the onKey method of the turtle screen. So first thing, I'm going to call the turtle screen. I'm going to say ts is, let's say, t.screen. Now remember, this is the screen object here, and I'm going to just, while I'm here, I'm just going to say set the background color to, let's say, so let me just check the command here. It is, so let's say maybe khaki. Khaki is quite nice for this, like light brown. Again, the background color is not important right now, but since we are here, we can as well set it up. Now, having done this, I am going to tell my screen, look, screen, the user is going to be clicking some buttons on the keyboard, some keys on the keyboard. Kindly be alert to those. And when the user presses, for example, the key of, let's say, the down arrow, then run this function down when the user presses, say, down arrow. Now here, it's important to understand, first is the function. This function cannot take any arguments. So our function down doesn't take any arguments. Next is the keys. Now here, I'm using down key, but you could have used, let's say, WASD, whichever, whatever key you like, you can use that. And in fact, you can imagine how powerful this is in multiple interactive games. I'm going to do the same thing for all the functions here. I just say, okay, look, you know, if the, so let's do it carefully. If the up, so I want the up function to be run if the up key is pressed. I want the right function to be run if, let's say, the right key is pressed, and I want the left function to be run, say, left when the left key is pressed. Now this is, fine, but there's one more step that is needed, which is that I'm going to tell the screen, well, screen, please be active and keep listening because you are going to get these keys. Now this is important, otherwise the screen won't respond. When I run this code, I get my turtle's moving. I must click at least once on the screen so that the screen is in focus. And now when I turn, for example, click the up arrow, notice my turtle started moving upwards. I'm right now clicking the down arrow, nothing is happening because turtle does not make an about turn. I can go left. I cannot immediately go right because again, turtle doesn't make make an about turn. I can go up again. I can come here, say go left, then go up, go right, and I can, let's say, make my turtle come down. Notice it's moving quite nicely without doing any about turns, and that's exactly what we wanted. Right now it's quite slow, but obviously speed can be changed, not from here, but by changing, let's say, the step size in the in the movement itself. So let's do that here. Let's make it, let's say, around 10 maybe. This will make it much faster. So when I do this, now my turtle moves quite well, quite fast. It kind of turns around nicely without doing an about turn. Now, really, this is quite similar to what we had done in Scratch, and this has been enabled because of these key bindings. So basically, remember, always function and the key name. And this function cannot have any arguments. So if I were to do a compare and contrast, notice how we have achieved the same impact by using a function and calling that function when the certain key is pressed. And of course, I must have ts.listen. In Scratch, this was a single loop which did all this job for me. But notice how this gets implemented using two, pieces of code over here. The impact is the same, the effect is the same, but the implementation is a little bit different. I hope you found this interesting. In general, if you think this is a good way to learn by building activities, by seeing the effect in front of your eyes, look at our website because we have many, many, many such activities. Take care. Thank you so much. Bye bye.